So every Monday, and it is alliterative, isn't it? Every Monday, Moral Maze with Michael. It's marvellous. Let's move on. Alissa Golob from Campaign Life Coalition joins us. So we have three people. They rotate. I don't mean they sort of go around in circles, but they come on the show every 3 weeks or so to discuss the issues. Though I've always said these are issues that perhaps don't deserve an entire segment, but they do deserve to be discussed in media, and you know they won't be properly and authentically in mainstream media. And that's one of the many reasons why you need Sun News. You don't have to agree with us, of course, but you should, if you believe in freedom, respect the right of people to have their point of view. Always lovely to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And let's begin. This is a wonderful example, actually, of why we do need an alternative to most media, because the headlines of major newspapers, three MPs call for homicide charges for abortion doctors, or something like that.
Yes.
That isn't what these guys were saying at all.
No, not at all. And so, you know, secular media sites like CBC, they were the most prominent ones. They did multiple video segments on it. And even the one, Hannah Thibodeau, had the letter of the MPs and she was waving it around. So she actually read the letter but still misled the story.
And she was on CBC?
She was on CBC. And basically, three Conservative MPs were calling on the RCMP to investigate babies who were born alive after botched abortions but then left to die. So they are legally considered persons under the criminal code. So these deaths should be investigated. Did they die because of the abortion? Were they left to die? Like, you know, these things matter. But the media said that these three Conservative MPs wanted to investigate all abortions after 20 weeks as homicide. So basically making them look loony because abortion is decriminalized in our country. And so much so that even in the House of Commons, the day the story broke, MP Megan Leslie stood up and said to the Prime Minister that three of his MPs wanted to investigate all abortions after 20 weeks as homicide, and can he please remind his government that abortion is not murder. So even she got it wrong.
And she's the NDP critic on crazy issues.
Exactly.
It is deeply worrying because there should be an informed debate on all of these issues. And when I read the headline, I wondered what was going on, and then read the story, and then read between the lines. Now, we think as many as, what, 50 babies a year could die in this way? Yes,
it was 500 between the year 2000 and 2009. And we do know from past nurses and even abortionists that this does happen. Jill Stanek, who's a very famous blogger and was a nurse in Chicago, the reason why she became pro-life is because these babies would be born alive and then they would be put in the utility closet and then left to die. And so she would rock them, and then she, you know, told the media and came out publicly about this, and then the Born Alive Infant Protection Act was passed in Chicago. And even more recently, the inhumane acts of abortionist Kermit Gosnell, who, when the babies were born alive after his multiple botched abortions, he would do something called snipping and slit the baby's spinal cord, and then the baby would die. So,
by the way, Chicago, which is a very liberal city, of course, Chicago School of Politics and Barack Obama and the rest of it, that they would pass such legislation. So there are people watching who don't agree with us on the abortion issue, but the idea of a baby that survives, that is alive, to be left to die or purposely killed. And when three MPs say, we'd like to investigate this, they're condemned for being hysterical and extreme. The opposite is the case.
And completely twisting the story and making them say something that they never said. And so one of the MPs, Maurice Vellacott, came out and said, this is not what I was saying. He had to do another press release, correct everyone. I think he was even on the CBC, which I'm glad they gave him even a small bit of airtime, saying this whole story is being twisted around. And meanwhile, illegal infanticide is happening, and it's being covered up.
University of Minnesota, I've spoken there many years ago, lecture to help female students get orgasms. Listen, I'm a 54-year-old bald Englishman married for 25 years. I don't even know what that is. So, but is that such a terrible thing? I mean, if women to be fulfilled in their personal physical life?
Well, I mean, if you're spending $3,500 to learn, I don't know who would want to do that. So I find it all kind of ironic because, you know, there was stories about university students who turned to the sex trade to pay for their university bills, which are going towards the sex trade, basically.
Being prostitutes, so I assume it's girls, becoming prostitutes to pay for their tuition so they could learn how to have orgasms.
Exactly.
Haven't haven't people had orgasms for like thousands of years quite naturally
I should
without
hope
some
so.
idiot neurotic professor standing up there in Minnesota of all places explaining how and why?
Yeah, and even on the actual website of the University of Minnesota, the words "magical G-spot" were right on the main page, which you know, I didn't think. So basically, university students can go to the University of Minnesota, learn how to get intense orgasms, learn about the magical G-spot, then they can fly over to University of Toronto and have a big orgy and practice what they learned.
It's a bit past. I mean, this sounds very early 70s to me.
Yeah.
Women, I mean, in Cosmo and so on. I wouldn't have thought, you know, having two daughters and a pretty good relationship with them and knowing how, you know, how they live and what they know. There are actually young women at university level who, I didn't know that. It just baffles me.
Well, at least people can accuse those who go to universities not to learn anything when they come out that is relevant to the real world anymore. So.
Yeah, I suppose there are all sorts of puns I could state right now. But the sort of thing that always gets me into trouble, so I'm not going to say anything else. Very briefly, scientists discover children's cells living in mother's brain.
Yeah, so always in the past, you know, there was between the mother's placenta and fetal cells, they would intertwine, and the fetal cells would be healing for the mother's body. They would boost the immune system to prevent cancer, heal tissue, do tissue repair, but now, for the first time, they're finding fetal cells in the mother's brains. And so women who died from Alzheimer's, they would not have these cells, so there's a linkage between the health of the brain and not getting the deadly disease Alzheimer's and being pregnant. And there's lots of studies showing how pregnancy improves health. And when I was doing my research for that, there was at the University of South Wales in Australia, they came up with a study saying that women who had more kids lived longer. But then an assistant professor came out saying, well, yeah, they do live longer and there are health benefits, but it's bad for the environment to have large families.
It seems like life is longer when you have that many children.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I have to say, we were just chatting before the went to air that I went to a lecture. This is my life. On a Sunday evening, I drive for 2 hours to hear a lecture on Dante. But it was a wonderful gathering with marvellous food and beer and great company, and so many people there with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 children. Most attractive, happiest people you could ever meet. And then, as I said in my monologue, actually, at the beginning of the show, these very neurotic, rather closed people, you know, with no children or one child, and telling the rest of us, you just don't understand, you don't get it. It's a funny old world.
It sure is.
And a better one for having you in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.